All right, so starting from where we were before, what I've got is a player that can actually place down a bomb, and his clone is constantly checking to see if he should be placing a bomb as well. So that's written out to the network variables. I would like to make it so that when I place an explosion, instead of just having one single one, it has more than that. So I'm just going to try running this just from here and just starting it with just one player. So hey, I'm the host. My game was created and I'm just going to start. So right now I've got it that I can place one bomb, it blows up, it's a single explosion. So to begin with, I actually want to start doing snapping to the grid. So at the moment, I'm able to freely move everywhere. And I think I would actually like to make it so that when I release the key, it snaps me to the nearest 32 by 32 spot. And similarly, I would like the bombs to do that as well. It'll allow me to create a maze where I can actually get through the maze when I let up on keys instead of having to try and get the exact pixel I need to go through narrow spaces. So when I release my left key, what I'd like to do is actually snap this guy to the grid. Move snap is a built-in command, and you give it the horizontal and vertical grid you want. So how much you want it to snap in the horizontal direction, how much in the vertical. I'm actually going to put that in all my key releases. Now, one warning, you can't center your sprites if you want to use this. Or if you do, you're going to have to jump it over a certain amount after you snap it to the grid. However, if I look at this, I'm like, hey, connect to myself. Host, okay. Created a game, start. So now when I let up on the key, it snaps it to the grid. I'd like to do something similar with the bombs so that when I place them, they snap to the grid. So when I press space, after I create this particular bomb, I'd like to snap it to the grid. I'm actually going to do that in bomb 1. So right after it's created, and before it writes down its X and Y position out to the network, I need to snap this guy to the grid. Then it's free to write to the network, and since it's written its X and Y position down after it's snapped, the clone bomb should also snap to the grid then. So that was in the create event of the bomb. So now, when I test this, and it takes a moment and I'm the host, my game was created. So now when I place a bomb, it actually goes, it snaps to the grid. Okay, that's a puny explosion, and I love me some big explosions, so I'm going to make it a lot bigger. My plan is actually to create a series of them. So what I'd like to do is make it so that the bomb goes in all the cardinal directions, up, down, left, and right. And I'd like to make maybe 3 explosions in a row in each of those directions, maybe 5. I'm going to put in a variable that keeps track of that. So my plan is I'm actually going to create a different kind of explosion, something called a center explosion. And his job is to create all of the explosions. So I'm going to create an object, explosion center. Depending on how you do your game, you might need one of these for each of the different players. If they all have different sizes of explosions, it's up to you. I'll show you the base one for here, though. So his job is to make the center explosion, and then in each of the cardinal directions, create the other explosions. The trick being, I want it to stop if it hits anything. So if it hits a player, if it hits a wall, and eventually when I have walls that can be blown up by these things, it should stop when it hits one of those walls as well. So to begin with, when this guy's created, he's going to create one of the regular explosions at his x and y position. So that's the center explosion. I think I'm going to create a variable which keeps track of how far out it goes. Explode count. So I'm going to start at 3 for now. So what I'd like to do from here is basically go check to the left, see if there's anything there, and if there is, basically create the explosion and stop. If there's not, then I'm just going to continue going. So let's see, what should I do? I'm going to start with my x position starting at -32. Keep going while it's greater than -32 times my explode count. And each time, I'm going to subtract 32 more. So I create a new variable. I named it x position. It's going to start at -32. It's going to keep going while it is greater than -32 times explode count. Every time I go through this loop, it's going to subtract 32. All right, so I need to, well, let's do this the naive way. I'm just going to create these things, and then eventually I'll have to do checks. So it's going to be x plus x position is where I place it on the x. Y is just going to be y. Let's create an explosion. So this is creating the left branch of the explosion, because if I'm going left in the x direction, that means I'm going left. So I'm just going to try this out to start with. I need to create one of these explosion centers instead of an explosion object. So when this bomb explodes, instead of explosion, I'm actually going to create an explosion center. And eventually, in the clone, I should do that too, by the way. So I'm paranoid. Let's test this. Host. Games created. Let's start. All right. Boom. That appears to be only 2 in that direction, not 3. It appears I need to say less than or greater than or equal to on my check. So in my explosion center, I should be saying greater than or equal to. All right, so that's the idea for creating the explosion. I should probably check to see if there's anything there. Let's see, do I want to do this before or after the create? Maybe afterwards. Let's see, I need to check to see if there is a particular object type there. So place meeting seems like a good friend of mine. So I can check for walls that way. And I can check for players as well, but I would have to manually check for every single one. That seems lame and tedious. So I'm going to help fix that. So I'm actually going to create a family tree of objects. So I'm going to create a new object. We'll get back to this in a second. I'm going to create a player parent object. The player parent object does nothing. However, all the players are children of that, including the clones, by the way. And the reason I'm doing this is simply so that when I check for collisions, all I have to do is check player parent and see if he's there, and that'll check all of the children as well. Maybe I want to put code in there eventually, maybe not. So by setting all of the players to have their parent be player parent, so now when I'm checking this, I can actually do place meeting at x plus x position y player parent.
I'm in the death sequence, so
Yeah.
that'd make it a lot easier.
Player parent underscore o. Now, place meeting might have an issue here. Let me check on the details of that. All right, so place meeting returns whether the instance placed at xy meets object. Now, that means that I've got to have some sort of sprite to collide with this thing. Okay, that's fine. So what I'm going to do is this explosion center is also going to have an explosion sprite. It turns out it's not going to matter on this guy whether he's visible or not. What I'm going to do at the very bottom of this thing is actually have it destroy itself. Just so that I don't have a bunch of explosion centers sitting around causing problems. But that allows place meeting to actually happen correctly.